All right, guys, welcome back to this promo week for my free 5-day challenge that I'm promoting for next week. It starts on Tuesday the 3rd. I put the link in the chat if you're interested in signing up for that. Today, we're talking with Heather Cypel, and we're going to be talking about something that's really important. We're going to be talking about energy. And energy is literally everything. And we're going to talk about some topics that maybe you might not be aware of, or maybe you might be. So, stuff like energy archetypes and why energy gets stuck, how energy can relate to your relationships, and all kinds of different ways. So, Heather, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I think we're just getting into the full swing of Mercury retrograde today. Wishing everyone a little bit of peace and rest when things could potentially get a little frustrating. So, yeah, everything is energy for sure. How are you today?
Oh, I'm good. And Mercury retrograde has been putting me through the ringer this week with my technology. It's been an interesting experience. So, but apparently I'm not the only one. I've been talking to other people. They've been having issues with theirs as well. So it's a
Yeah,
thing.
marvelous.
So
Yeah, and I think too, having energy tools can definitely help. The more and more I've gone through the seasons, especially eclipses, the more that you know, the more tools that you have, the easier those things become to navigate too.
absolutely. So let's start with the basics. Let's talk about energy, what the energy body is, why does it matter for people? It's a lot more than just good vibes and bad vibes. And what kind of do you think people should know most about what energy is, how it relates to who you are, and how you kind of navigate through your everyday life?
Yeah, definitely. So I kind of go a little zoomed in on this one because when we're doing energy work at all, when we're starting that awakening journey, where we're progressing through life, it really helps to have a clear understanding of what we're dealing with and what we're working at any given point in time, right? So, to me, the energy body is that etherical blueprint that creates the physical body. So, you can almost imagine the physical body as like a hologram image that doesn't have tangible matter, but it still has a lot of data happening in there. And every tiny little aspect of our physical body is created by the energy body, and each tiny little piece governs a part of who we are and how we're going to interact with the external world.
Mhm.
So, first, it starts with the energy body, then the physical body is built upon it. Then, between those two, it creates the psyche or our mind, right? And then from those three, we have the emotions that kind of pull all together and have us as a person and navigating the complexities of all of that gets a little complicated, and we're very familiar with a world that we go to the doctor and they give you a pill or they tell you something, and it's just looking at the physical body.
Mhm.
And then we have psychology, which includes for the mind and sometimes the emotions. And we, can say, okay, well, we need some emotional release to have some physical release too. Somatics include both physical movement of the body in order to get those breakthroughs through the emotional space too. And I'm a practitioner who goes into the energy body specifically, and I hang out there. We work there. So I don't work in the field, which is from the edge of your body out, right? This is what is being projected out of us. So like if we're a projector, the light, our own essence, shines out, right? Well, in the energy body itself, there's all of these processes that are running. There's all of these programs. There's all of our wounds. There's everything that's shining out and projecting from the energy body into our field and causes external world to relate to us in the way that, is all complex inside of us. And there are some parts of us that are shining through completely clearly and wonderfully. There are parts of our energy body that function just right all the time. You know, our eyes blink just right, our digestion usually happens just right. And we don't really think about it. Those parts are the completely functional parts of our system. But when in life we end up with challenges or we're trying to figure out how to unravel a piece, I always go to what is happening in that part of the energy body, and we begin to understand and explore it a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. And I tend to, in my practices, I tend to mix the mental and the emotional with the physical, but there's so many
Mhm.
other parts that go into that whole, and like you said, the somatics and the body movement and addressing the actual energy is so important, especially like I do inner child healing and like everything is energy, like I said before. So when you have an energy which comes from a wound that or trauma that you've experienced in this lifetime or another lifetime, or something that has happened and that energy gets stuck, well then it starts
Yeah.
to bleed through those layers, right? It starts at that energetic layer, but then it goes through, and if you don't address it, then it affects the way you think, then it affects the way you are emotionally attached to things or react to things, and then if you still don't address it, then it'll start to manifest in physical form. And that's why I try to explain this to people when they have illnesses or diseases, that okay, well, let's figure out where the energetic root of that is and try to fix that, and hopefully that will help alleviate your symptoms. And granted, there are
Yes.
some cases where it's just a life experience that person wanted to have and you can't fix it, but most of the time when you get to that energetic root of the problem, it is amazing how many things in your life will shift when you really get down to
Absolutely.
that.
Yeah, it is profound and absolutely amazing. And there was one additional thing that I learned in recent years that can have positive impact as well. I had a physical health issue for well over 30 something years and had hunted everywhere for a resolution. I went to the chiropractors, the doctors, the therapists, the yoga, like I did all the things. I went to psychology and did the trauma release and, talk therapy and all the things, and even did energy work and did all of the things for years and years in energy space too. And that piece just simply wasn't moving. And it was this most recent energetic that I personally have been practicing, which we'll talk a little bit more about later, but I call it defrosting the energy body. When our selves have entered this world and had difficult experiences, I did not know this and I didn't learn this in any energy training anywhere, but parts of your energy body freeze up and you end up having limitation. It causes those trauma loops and then it causes repeated patterns, to just occur more and more throughout your life. And certainly I had a lot of that. I had a very frozen energy body. And as I started to defrost more and more, and there were other situations and issues in my life coming up that I was, defrosting this trauma for. But after about, I don't know, it was maybe about 3 or 4 months, I started noticing like feeling around my body. And the health issue was that my muscles were so tight. Like, I mean, it really sometimes felt like bones underneath my skin rather than muscle. And also in conjunction with that, my actual bones were out of place, right? It was crooked. It's called scoliosis. So I just felt around my body one day and noticed that my muscles started like they were actually softer. They felt like regular people's muscles.
Wow.
And I was like, what? So I started poking around everywhere. And I was like, oh my God, it's like this almost everywhere. And I realized I had just spent months defrosting my energy body and was literally removing the trauma out of my muscles. And, great, great progress can happen when you work on the quantum level at all, And yeah, getting those stuck emotions out is crucial. And it's just not pleasant to carry that around with us
Mhm.
in our subconscious all the time, I feel like if we had been born into a society that taught us how to do this all these years, we would have been doing
Absolutely. And it amazes me, even, you know, coming from the academic side of things to the more spiritual side of things, like I initially wanted to be a child psychiatrist, but I decided against going to medical school because I found out what the medical school program really stood for. And the fact that they completely neglect the holistic and energetic side of things really baffles me. I know why
it.
they do it, but that's a conversation for another day. But,
Yeah, sure.
but when you really tie those things together, it makes such a huge impact and such a difference that there's, these miracle healings that happen that would not have happened otherwise until you actually really go in and look at it from all of these different layers and all these different perspectives and really get to that root cause. And it's interesting when you said defrosting your light body, your energy body. So whenever I hear something truthful or something that resonates, I get these, I call them truth tingles, but I get energy tingles through my body. And I got them when you said that. So I definitely want to talk about that more. I definitely want to know
Definitely.
like so go ahead and kind of explain a little bit more about what that means.
Yeah, so after years and years and years and years of becoming an energy practitioner for more and more modalities, learning more and more energy tools, I had reached a glass ceiling. And my energy work, I was still devoted to it. I was still doing my practices, but it just wasn't really creating any shifts in my life. And I was at a point in my life where I really needed some shifts. So I was pretty motivated. So I sent out a little prayer from my heart, asking Spirit for tools that worked faster and more consistent results. And it took a while. Oh, it took so long, but it finally came through. And one night, just an energy tool downloaded to me. I immediately started working with it. And after a little while, I realized, wait a minute, this is melting away frozen energy. I was like, wait, frozen. It really reframed a lot for me because I had studied so very much about trauma. Certainly living in this life, I experientially understood so much about trauma. So when it showed up to me as like frozen parts of the energy body, it really clicked for me. I was like, okay, this explains everything. And some of the ways that we understand trauma is a little too complex, actually. I found that it really gets simplified a lot when you're just like, oh, I've got some frozen energy. Let me melt it off. Because what happens is when we experience something painful, in the split second we experience it, um, if our brain didn't already have a paradigm for that, if we didn't know how to handle that situation, right then and there, our energy body freezes. Now, if in 5 minutes somebody explained themselves and you were like, oh, okay, I understand, that doesn't undo the frozen energy, right? You still had the impact of that. And so as I started melting this trauma off of my system, I noticed so many things. Generally an energy tool will give you a few, a couple few results or whatever, and you'll notice some shifts. But this was so pervasive. My emotions started to lighten immediately. I started to have more of my own energy throughout the day. My triggers lessened. I was able to then perceive past the understandings that I had had about previous painful situations and really kind of collect more data about those past events than I was present to before. And also, obviously my health issue resolving, like I was able to find the very correct things that was going to move the bones in my body, right? Like doctors had been telling me for 30 years, the only thing that you can do is to have a surgery that, slices you down your back and fuses a metal rod to your spine. And I was like, no,
No.
like that's not for me. Um, but over 30 years, I just knew that there was a resolution out there. But after 30 years, my back was deteriorating 1 degree per year. So, like when I was 18, it was an 18-degree curve. When I was 30, it was a 30-degree curve. And the last time I checked, I was 42 and it was a 41-degree curve. I mean, a 45-degree angle is not what you want your spine shaped like. You know
Yeah,
what I'm saying? Like it kept deteriorating. And I was like, okay, spirit, like, I know there's going to be a resolution. And if it doesn't start happening soon, my body's going to be damaged to a point where it's going to be a hell of a lot harder to repair, if at all, right? So I'm like, kind of, get on with that. And so when that trauma started re- uh, defrosting, melting away, right? When there was less of it, I was able to land more options, the correct paths for me, things that I had been searching for, actively searching for. Just started to happen in my life, and I call it uneclipsing, right? It's like those things that are right here, but if we've got frozen energy right here, then we're never going to connect with it, no matter how, no matter what, no matter how long you search, no matter how much money you pay, right? And that's exactly what's happened. It's like when this trauma receded, I was able to see the things that were right on the edge of it. That's a hell of a lot of results coming from one energy tool.
that's amazing. That sounds awesome. I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
So, along those same lines, let's talk about stuck energy a little bit more in detail. So, there's stuck energy that can be on the physical, emotional, mental layer, and it kind of stagnates and gets stuck. And I kind of want to hear your opinion about what exactly causes that, and what does it really feel like in your body or in your mind, your emotions, and why, like, how can we explain to people how and why they're carrying these things and maybe not even realizing it?
Yeah, I suppose there are lots of answers to that question. You can come at it from many different angles. So I'll just speak to the one that I'm, most familiar with, and kind of work in that way with, my own clients. The mind really wants to comprehend, it wants to wrap itself around it. You want to know what's happening in your inside of yourself, inside of your mind. And sometimes when you have stuck energy, it doesn't allow your mind to kind of penetrate all the data, right? It's like a tangled web with all kinds of delusions and illusions and painful feelings. And they're all valid, right? All of the ways that we can perceive things, all of the emotions that come forward, but they're not all necessary. So when we have these very, very painful experiences, most of the time it comes from experiences where we didn't feel like we had options. Like, I guess you could say a lack of control, but some people kind of frame that word control from different angles. So we'll just say options. You didn't have viable options to keep yourself safe or get yourself the resourcing that you need. And then also you can include this concept of like codependence, right? Like, especially if we're little and we didn't get our need met, we were dependent upon our parent. So we didn't have greater options to get that need met. And so it created some frozen energy, and then it created that limitation, right? So it started the eclipsing experience where you weren't just simply naturally able to access new options.
Mhm.
And that is a huge, huge piece that I delve into. It's kind of more advanced than this conversation. It's what we get into after we defrost the energy body and we find the really crazy energetics that are underneath it, having caused all of the stuff to begin with. But we know that when we incarnate, we choose certain soul lessons.
Mhm.
We're going to come into this earth plane and we know that it is learning via friction and challenge and the things that our conscious mind just doesn't like, you know? And those things are really embedded into us. It's like we're going to learn those soul lessons. It's going to happen and we don't like it. So we're going to incur some frozen energy, right? It's
Yeah.
going to create those limitations and then now we're going to have to go through and work through them and resolve them. But I do think it all works in conjunction, right? If you kind of zoom out and you look at all of these souls incarnating, and this one's doing this, and this one handles things that way, and we all have different operating systems, and we don't all just flow smoothly with one another. And then for some people, we have great compatibility, and it's just a smooth interaction where it's just like, oh, we click, everything's going to be fine. I don't have any fear, worries, or concerns in this interaction. Anything that you say to me, we'll be able to talk it out, work through. You're a safe person, right? So we do, plan for ourselves a certain amount of safe people, and we are coded for engaging with a certain amount of safe people in our life. But we're also coded for engaging with a certain amount of painful people. And that's where we have the friction, and that's where we learn and we grow. We deal with the stuck energies, we feel better, we help others. We master those soul lessons, and then we collapse that timeline
Mhm.
that that soul lesson was on. So it's a big journey, but when we're first getting started, we're like, wait, what do I do? My first recommendation would be start defrosting.
I think that sounds like a great suggestion. Um,
Yeah.
so I want to get into the energy body archetypes. If you can kind of explain a little bit more about what they are, how they show up differently in different people, and how, if you understand what your archetype is, how it can change the way that you kind of navigate through life and make decisions.
Definitely. So, energy body archetypes are what I call the operating system of a person. Now, I love operating systems and coding. I delve into that kind of stuff amazingly. There are things like astrology, there are things like human design, even your love languages is part of your operating system, right? So, I delve into all different kinds of operating systems for sure. And I think people really can navigate life a lot more easily when they know more about their own coding.
Mhm.
And one of the things that I teach is the energy body archetypes, which if you imagine that hologram of your body, for example, what's coded into it is going to be one of these five archetypes. And actually, it's going to be two because usually we have a primary and a secondary. But let's just simplify for this example. Okay, so we have our operating system, and that's going to determine where your energy sits most in your energy body. So each of the different system types, their energy is focused in a different area from the other system types, which means that their expression in life is going to come out very, very different. Some people are hyper relational because their energy actually comes out of their energy body a bit more. So there's more energy from here to here than there is kind of hanging out on the inside. Not that there's none on the inside, but to those individuals, sometimes it actually can feel like there's none on the inside, right? My primary system type, I call it the sprinkler. It's like I just like sprinkle energy here and there. I have it in me, and then I divest it to others a lot. And so, of course, in that one, you would notice an overgiving pattern, right, in a person. So that's like a huge indicator of what's happening. One of the system types, it's like above their head more. So they have more etherical connection, clearer knowledge coming through, right? So learning about the different energy bodies energy body archetypes can really help you understand your coding because a lot of the time too what I've noticed is that people find that some of the things that they criticize about themselves the most or they consider flaws are actually one of their best mad skills genius area, you know? So it's like if you lean into that more, it'll become more natural and then you'll have like ease of access in life. And then, of course, with some of them, you already know and operate easily in like some of your like really good gifted ways. Um, and also your weak spots or your wounding, the spots where you're just simply not going to really master that. You can lower your expectation of yourself in doing that because you're like, okay, well, my system didn't choose to focus on this in this lifetime, right? Some people are really great salesmen. Other people are just not going to be a great salesman to save their life. You know, it's like, so you can kind of see what you're gifted at, what you're good at, and not make this life harder on yourself than you need to.
Yeah. So how would one go about finding out what their energy body archetype is?
I'm about to start recording a training on that. I'm like fingers crossed that I begin recording next week. um, but yeah, it'll be available on my website hopefully next month. Actually April because we're right at the tail end of February. So yeah, at some point in April, I expect to have that for sale in my website and in my energy school, it will be uploaded too. So yeah.
Awesome.
Well, in my energy school, it's actually going to be two parts. So on my website, I'm just going to have the first part available where it's like, here's the information, here's how you know, here's how you relate with others who have a very different operating system than yours. That's really helpful for children and romantic partners, parents. You know, there's close relationships that might feel a little frictional. It might just be helpful to actually understand their energy body archetype and engage with them well. But in my energy school for improving your relationship energy, I am going to, in module two, I'm going to put a whole series of if you want to switch your attraction, because if you have a particular system type that you naturally are attracted to in a romantic partner, but it's not your ideal match, how to shift that in your energy body. So
That's amazing.
that's advanced training.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing. And you mentioned love languages earlier too. So let's talk about the energy body and how that affects your romantic relationships. So because we all know that stuck energy, a lot of that comes from wounds and traumas that we've experienced. So if you
Yeah.
haven't gone through and started healing those things, and you have these wounds and the stuck energy that's stored and stagnant, and it affects, like I said, the way that your behavior patterns and the way you think, how does healing that aspect of you affect how the type of people you attract or are attracted to, and how does the archetype kind of play into that as well?
Sure. Yeah. So people who don't do energy work or have no paradigm of that, they're probably never going to do that in their life because they come to me for relationship stuff anyways, Um, I tell them the average person, it's sort of like when you meet somebody, like imagine yourself as like a yard, right? And like you're walking onto someone else's front yard, they're walking onto your front yard. And since you don't know them, there is a bunch of landmines underneath this front yard and you don't know where they are. But the second you step on one, this person is going to explode, right? So this is natural for every person. And when we get to know someone more, we've stepped on a couple of their landmines and we've navigated through that painful experience. And what we tend to do is walk on eggshells around that particular topic with that person. And while most relationships still have to endure this experience, those of us who do energy work and have energy tools, we can create a much better experience because of the fact that Telepathy runs through the heart space, right? A lot of people think of it, and television puts it as like a mind reading kind of experience. That's not how it goes. It's through the heart. And you can be super in sync with a person, super easy. Communication comes slowly. Suddenly they step on one of your landmines, and part of your heart is eclipsed, right? And we would want it to just like uneclipse again after, we've settled down and feel better. But 4 weeks later, 2 months later, 3 years later, that part of your heart is still eclipsed to that person. And the more that that happens, the more parts of your heart that eclipse, the less your connection with your romantic partner is going to have that active energy flowing through it. And this is where the society has the experience of normalcy is a dull relationship after you've been together for years. And that's not the healthy rendition. That is normal. I would say more than 50% of relationships are that way, but it does not have to be that way. The more that we can deal with our own landmines and defrost that energy and work those pieces under it, the more we can open access to our heart in that spot, and that energy can flow through again. And I think my clients are usually pretty shocked at they kind of hear me in theory, right? Like, okay, but he hurt me a couple times, and like I know I have some pain in my heart, but he's really doing the thing, and I don't think that there's going to be much progress. And they start listening to this, melting away, defrosting, recording transmissions that I have overnight. And some of them are messaging me the very next day, like, oh my God, like I'm starting to note, I see these shifts starting to happen. And when a man naturally responds, that's like the healthy expression. But because there's been so much pain and suffering for females on this planet for millennia,
Mhm.
it's been the case that we have frozen energy bodies, not just our own, but generationally frozen areas of our system that we're not operating in our mastery. We're not allowing our wisdom to be known from those parts of our system. It's almost like a dormant part of our energy body. And so when we can defrost, we can get that part of the energy body communicating with spirit. Therefore, we can manifest more things. Communicating with our romantic partner, we can have more openness and smoothness in our connection, and we feel more alive.
Mhm.
So there's a massive growth that can happen just from defrosting the energy body and then working through a couple pieces of what's exposed underneath it.
Yeah. So in your experience with working with defrosting the energy body and these kinds of like traumas and things with romantic partners, what's been the most profound story that you've heard, whether it was like the quickest turnaround or just the most amazing, like, wow, now I really see it, like that aha moment that you've seen with your clients?
Yeah, I mean, so like one lady messaged me and it was literally one night. It wasn't even one of my like full length specific energy transmissions that I have on my website. It was my free mini one. I told her, just put that on repeat and you like to turn down the audio, leave it playing all night long. And literally the next morning, she was messaging me and already realizing that, all throughout the call that we had the day before, she was talking about the limitations from his end, right? And so she messaged me with this big old paragraph of what she was realizing about herself and how much control she was requiring. It was kind of like clinging to control because she wanted to feel safe. And she started to realize how she had been a difficult experience for him. And he had been very, very gracious through the process and was being understanding and kind. And she was kind of talking her way in, because we do that. We talk and talk and talk to our romantic partner when we feel like there's an issue and we want a resolution to come through the conversation. We want behavioral patterns to happen and to shift through a meeting of the minds.
Right.
But really, the absolute best shifts that can happen is when you work your energy body I remember, back in the day, a matter of years ago, someone was telling me, and this was the man, the husband in the relationship, and he was like, when we have discussions and we decide to, do a new approach and change course or whatever, she's changing course the very next day. And I feel like I have rocks in my boots. Like I want to go that way, but I can't shift. And I said, well, looking at her past, she didn't have very much trauma in her life.
Mhm.
Looking at your past, you were beaten by your father and had a very erratic life experience. You are not expected to shift quickly.
Right.
Trauma freezes. I mean, it's very, very challenging for someone to create a behavioral pattern when things are stuck.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about the healing path. You've talked about energy being eclipsed and getting stuck and frozen, but what does it actually look like to release that stuck energy or to deal with those emotional wounds? What's your take
I
on
think that's the most magical part of this is because I did the long journey, like healing work where I mean it was all that feminine wounding. We were being present to it, forehead to the floor, crying, witnessing the misogyny. It was so painful at one point for me. I ended up losing so much weight. My body was ransacked by doing that kind of energy work. And I'm like, okay, this isn't healthy. I mean, if it's actually hurting me, but think about it, they say this in the science, aspect where they do scans of the brain and they delineate trauma that when you remember the traumatic experience, you're literally viscerally experiencing it again.
that?
Why would we do that to ourselves, right? So that, I mean, I just didn't know another way, right? That our society, I think, just doesn't really know much of another way. And so when you work just with the energy, right? When you like imagine like a ball of energy, feel it where it is in your body, and you work it that way, you don't necessarily have to go through all the memories and all of the like repeated patterns again. And when I started melting away this trauma off of my system, it was sort of like if it snowed a lot outside and in that it like all froze together in a chunk after a while, and then they had like sticks and leaves and maybe little critters or whatever, frozen up in there. I realized that the white energy or the clear energy was our own energy. It was limiting our vitality. It was limiting our options, our range of motions. We like end up getting exhausted. We end up tapping out of conversations. We can't hang out in them anymore. We get brain fog, right? So in this example, the leaves and the sticks and all the things that are frozen in there is the painful stuff.
Mhm.
But we're just present to the painful stuff about trauma, right? We're just present to the like the steves and the leaves and the sticks, and all of the junk that's in there. That's the horror that really makes us feel terrible. And when we start defrosting, those things just naturally fall out, and you don't even notice them going away. It's just like they're just not simply not there anymore. And I tried super hard to access those emotions again later, not because I wanted to feel them, but because I didn't actually believe that they would be gone forever.
And were they?
Yes.
So what's one thing, if for the people that are listening to this, what's one thing that you can recommend that they do that they can start right now to try to help either highlight these things that need to be defrosted or to kind of give themselves an opportunity to start that process?
Yeah, for sure. So I have a free energy transmission on my website. Like I said, it works just the same as if you buy the longer one. But you can put that on repeat and defrost all night long. I still listen to my audio transmissions at night because it's 8 hours that I don't have to actively do energy work, that it's still happening. I mean, it's like the easiest thing I've ever come across. And but I have a library on my website of different ones. They're $40 each, which I think is just downright amazing for something so profound.
Mhm.
And the easiest way to go about it is, I mean, I only have a handful, there's like about seven of them right now, but you would look for the word that feels like the pattern that you've experienced that feels painful. So there's the trauma of abuse, the trauma of neglect, heartbreak, abandonment, betrayal, like look for the ones that really feels like, yeah, I've had that happen. And you might have some negative, or as my daughter would say, salty feelings about it. Then that was the one that's for you.
Nice. Awesome. Great.
Yeah.
So, for all the people that are listening, what's one piece of advice that you could give them about, and it doesn't even have to be about energy, it could be about anything, but what's one piece of advice that you would give them to try to help them along with their journey?
I would say become friends with patience, because patience is needed anytime we end up with a sense of urgency. And we do. It's a part of the journey. We want the resolution now. When we get into that energetic, when we're trying to push, is when we don't get the resolution. So if we can like pull ourselves back, simmer down a little bit, and then pray for clarity. I mean, it's a simple energy tool, but it is one of the most effective ones I still use to this day. If ever I feel stuck, I'm like, okay, I need clarity. Like, send some clarity through, because it's the number one prayer that will be answered,
Mhm.
right? Like, a
And
lot of people end up praying for like a specific result, but that result may not be meant to happen. But if you pray for clarity, you'll get your next step along the way.
100%. I agree. Awesome.
Yeah.
So, if this information that you guys have heard is hitting home or something that resonates with you, I want to invite you next week, starting on Tuesday. I'm doing my free 5 day challenge, and energy is something that we're going to be talking about a lot. We're not going to go into the deep, detailed healing process, but we will do some light healing, opening the heart, and kind of connecting with our own bodies and really learning what those feelings like stuck energy and things like that kind of feel like in your body. So I will make sure that I share that link with everybody. And I'm also currently offering a discount on Akashic Records readings. If anyone is interested, I'm just going to throw that out there while I'm here. So if you want to get a deeper dive into maybe some stuck energy that is affecting you from a past life, or things that you kind of need to work through energetically to get to that next level, you can also access that information this way as well. It's kind of like getting a cheat sheet to your own energy. So you can find me on Facebook and DM me or email me at info@divineascensionco.com. So thank you, Heather, so much for coming in. And I will make sure that I share your website and your information on this post as well. So thank you so much. This was a wonderful chat.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. It was such a delight.
Yes, awesome. Thank you.